Good afternoon. We're in the Beaufort County NOW Studios here in beautiful, lovely Maxwood. We're here today with my guest, Hood Richardson. This is our first inaugural show of a new series entitled, What's Happening Now? And Hood, who's been so gracious to agree to be here and has done this show before with me, another show, and it was a very successful show. It was only natural that I asked Hood to come back and be with us again to kick this one off. Without any further talk from me, I'd like to introduce a six-term county commissioner in Beaufort County who always speaks his mind, and we can be well assured he's going to speak his mind today. Hood, thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
It's always great to see you. I always enjoy being within your audience. You always tell me things I never knew or should have known. And today we're going to talk a little bit about county government, and then we might branch out from there. And who knows where we're going to go. So Hood, we just finished up the county budget here in Beaufort County. I guess this is your 24th county budget. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
That'd be 4-year terms, 6 terms. You're running for office this year.
Yes, I am.
And if he gets elected, it will be an unprecedented 7th term for a Republican county commissioner in Beaufort County. Never been done before. And I'm very happy that he's here. I hope this show helps you in any way it can to reach the public. Of course, he reaches the public very well and gets a lot of votes every time he runs. I don't know if this is going to help any, but let's just say it really pushes you over the top.
Well, thank you for those compliments. You're more than gracious. Of course, Stan, you're a lot of help. We're a team. I mean, I couldn't be successful without your help.
I am Hood's junior partner on the Beaufort County Commission. I have enjoyed working with Hood. He's right about 85% of the time, and those are odds I am not going to go against. If he's right 85% of the time, that makes the other guys wrong 85% of the time. So those are pretty good odds to stick with a Hood. We do disagree on some things, but it is rare. Hood, the county government this year, this is something we did agree on. Too much money was being spent, and not enough cuts were made, as usual. What's your idea about all that?
Well, you're exactly right. There's too much money is being spent and not enough cuts were made. We went through the budget this year, the commissioners did, in less than 10 hours. That's a world record because in round numbers, you're talking about a $63 million budget. And it shows you how fantastic your commissioners are when we can work at the rate of $6.2 million an hour in reviewing a budget. Of course, the answer to this is the budget wasn't reviewed. It was plopped down as a continuation budget, and none of these guys wanted to do any work on it, so they just went along with it. There are a lot of issues that should have been raised in the budget, and there are a lot of things hiding out there in off-budget things. Like most voters don't know that most of we're approaching more than $2 million expense of totally unnecessary expense in the jail. And did you know that's off budget? That's not in the budget at all. That's off in a separate special capital fund that was set up so the sheriff wouldn't look bad. And folks, we are wasting a lot of money in the jail. It's amazing to me at how much money we are wasting. What started out as a $200,000 project has now become a $2 million project.
Speaking of that $6.2 million, that mathematical wizardry that you just kind of came up with, which always gets me, whether we're in a meeting or just talking amongst ourselves. One thing happened at one of the more recent meetings, that being that the commissioners refused to look into the sheriff's negotiations on dealing with Pitt County on housing our prisoners out of town. If you remember correctly, and I know you do, but I'm saying this for the public, what happened was we as Beaufort County commissioners were left to spend money on negotiations by our sheriff, and we don't know how those negotiations really went. We don't know if he talked to more than one person, and we know there's other jails that take prisoners. We feel that there may have been a lot more money spent than needed to be, and since Hood understands the math of everything, I want you to expound on that if you can. You remember that meeting. You remember how there were 2 votes to look into what happened and just take a few more days. And then there were the rest of the votes said, we got to do it now because something may happen. We don't know what's going to happen, but something might happen right now.
Well, Stan, you're just being too nice to the powers that be. What really happened, if you want to thumbnail it, is, and tell me if you disagree with this, is the commissioners were called in and essentially said, vote for this or else. And they had the 4 votes rigged in before they called a special call meeting. And what had happened is, without the knowledge of the Board of County Commissioners, the sheriff had been allowed to go and negotiate some kind of a deal with Pitt County to rent a whole pod over there. And the cost for that pod is $7,600 a day, as I recall. And we are paying about $60 a day for 40 prisoners. So what's the difference between $2,400 a day and $7,600 a day? It's a lot of money, isn't it?
It sure is. And it seems like at the last meeting, it had dropped from 40 prisoners down to the low 30 range.
Well,
which is even going to be more money per day we're paying.
And we need to talk about that too. But going on with what we're talking about with this particular issue right here, the sheriff had been allowed to go and negotiate this deal himself. And when we started asking questions, Stan and I, we got the answer back was it was essentially a take it or leave it. And the county, whoever the county is, I'm trying to figure out who the county is at this point, because it is certainly not your Board of County Commissioners. But the county allowed the sheriff to go and negotiate this deal. And when the contract came around, they allowed the sheriff to sign the contract. The sheriff has no signing authority. The commissioners have the money. We tax the people. The sheriff does not tax people. So this is one of those deals that really just rubbed me so raw. It was unreal, because what had happened is the sheriff, in conjunction with, I'll let you fill in the blanks as to who else, but they must have had 4 votes on the Board of Commissioners that were undercover, that nobody knew about, went and did this deal, which was a bad deal for the county. This is why we're approaching $2 million, and we may go more. This thing has been one bad decision after another. And I can tell you this, if you get the right people on the County Board of Commissioners this fall, that stuff is going to stop. Stan will tell you, when Stan came back on the board, Stan kept saying, but we didn't do it that way. That's not the way we do it. Well, with the new group of people that's running the Board of County Commissioners, they threw out all of the precedent, all of the operating rules that we had. For instance, you can't buy automobiles unless you bring them in front of the commissioners. Yes, it's approved in the budget that we're going to buy, say, 4 automobiles for the sheriff's department this year. But you still have to come to the commissioners before you buy them. Why? So the commissioners can see what you are actually buying. If you look at what the sheriff's driving and you look at what his employees are driving, they've upscaled these cars every year. They are driving big, fancy automobiles that were never intended by me as a commissioner to do. And you have a group of commissioners on there now who are allowing this. Don't forget, it takes 4 votes to make this happen. So they really have 5 votes, because they swapped one of those votes around between Rebholz and Frankie Waters to make Rebholz look good, because Rebholz is running for a commissioner. We are really hoping this fall that in this election that the conservatives can get control of this board, because this kind of egregious, unlawful behavior can be stopped. And they will try to argue you down that it is perfectly legal. It is legal to send the sheriff to negotiate, but only after it's come before the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners have said, this is your parameter to negotiate. What went on there was, in my opinion, unethical at best and unlawful at worst. It's a great example of off-budget wheeling and dealing, because none of that money falls into the sheriff's budget that he has to account for. It's money that we appropriate under the special ordinance, capital ordinance for fixing the jail. It's cover-up money. And we have another thing that we need to talk about before this is over with, ultimately, and that is, what about the county park? When I say to people, did you know that we have a county park? They look at me like I'm crazy. Well, you have a county park, and it is a total disaster. It is off budget. and that's why nobody knows about it. The county paid $400,000 for a 6-acre dredge pond. Now, the county manager says it was appraised. Yeah, they went around the street and got their good buddy to appraise it, and he would put whatever value they wanted to on it. But, you know, Stan's been in real estate for some time. He knows values and what makes property value. I spent since 1981 or 82 in Beaufort County dealing with Beaufort County real estate. So even though I'm not buying and selling, I still have a pretty good idea of what's valuable and what's not. And I can tell you a dredge pond isn't valuable to anybody for anything.
I'd like to pick up on that since you mentioned me. Property is valuable as to whatever anybody's willing to pay for it. And obviously they saw Beaufort County coming when they bought that piece. I wasn't on the Board of Commissioners then, or I'd have been as adamant as you are. We don't need to pay that kind of money for a piece of property that has a wonderful view, but it's only about 3 foot above sea level, and most of the land is unusable. Now, wonderful view is a wonderful thing. It's got value, but you've got to have usable land to go along with it. Without usable land, you don't have anything but a view. You can get that from a camera.
Well, that's true. And the other disaster on this particular issue, as far as the county making decisions, is I had done work on this dredge pond, so I was familiar with it. I had been on it. The toe of it toes out into Wrights Creek near Pamlico Beach, in case you don't know where that is, eastern end of the county. And the water was lapping on the toe of the dredge pond. Well, what happens when the containment fails on the dredge pond? The dredge spoils can go back out into Wrights Creek where they came from. Who do you think's going to pay to fix that? The taxpayers of Beaufort County. So now the manager says, oh, well, we can fix that for $300,000. $300,000 is a lot of money to me. I don't know what it is to the rest of you, but let's see now. We got $400,000 in buying the useless land, which wasn't worth more than 20 to begin with. And now we're going to spend $300,000 so we can protect our useless land. Okay. Then after that, we still have to raise the money for the so-called park. What do you want in the park? Let's see. We're going to have bathrooms at an end of a dead-end road. What do you think could go on at night around a place like that? What do you think could even go on in the daytime around an isolated place like that? How many people in Beaufort County do you think will want to go down there and picnic at the park? Answer, not very many, because we've got hundreds, if not thousands of miles of waterfront in Beaufort County that people already use to go and picnic on and do things with. It's not a population center down there. It's one of the worst ideas that I've ever heard come out of a group, but that came out of the new leadership on the Board of County Commissioners, and we need to change that leadership.
This is one of the reasons why when Hood is adamant about something, you got that 85-15 ratio. 85% of the time he's going to be right, 15 he may be wrong about an issue that we really hadn't got delved into yet. Do you want to be on the 15 side or the 85 side? I'm going to be on the 85 side with Hood, especially when he's talking about engineering and real estate. And I understand the real estate. I understand a little bit about engineering too. I used to be a surveyor. That's one of the reasons I think Hood and I get along so well, because we understand that there's math to everything. But when Hood starts getting on the numbers, real numbers, tangible numbers about tangible things, you got to stick with the Hood. Now, I would like to circle you right back around to that jail issue. We are talking about paying about $240 a day. That's my head math right now for the prisoners. And there's some back end costs that we haven't talked about that we may be charged with. Now, you're talking about an issue that you and I discussed a long time ago. Hood came, I was probably working in this room, my office / studio. Hood said, Stan, we got to go see the manager. I'd just gotten on the Board of Commissioners. We got to go see him. Well, where is he? We made some phone calls, found out he was in a meeting at the airport. We went and we spoke to him. We said, we got to get some of the commissioners together. Well, there were some commissioners in that meeting speaking with the city. I guess they were doing joint business at that time. And we talked to them about not having a place for our prisoners. They were sending them out of town because some of the jail's doors didn't work. Now, nobody knew that the jail doors did not work. It'd been going on for a few months. You didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. You found out about it. You brought me along as your sidekick to make sure they understand you had another commissioner that understood the truth of it. Am I not right?
You're correct.
So I was there. They actually listened to you at that point. They hadn't listened to you for like 4 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So we started it on this debacle, thinking it would be, as you say, at the most a $200,000 job where we fix the hardware in the doors. And then it got to be something else. And now it's approaching $2 million and could go beyond, considering all the factors.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Stan, it started off as fixing the sliders on the doors for $200,000. And it would deliberately commissioners did things and had staff do things that kept running the price up. And every time you turn around, they have another disaster that they put on this thing that's costing us money. It's a great example of Board of County Commissioners that violated its duty to the public to manage things in an efficient way. But what had happened, as you recall, when you and I went over there, is we had found out that about half of the jail had been shut down and was not to be reopened. They just shut it down and sent the prisoners out, and we were paying at that time about $60 a day to keep the prisoners out of town, plus having to drive them back and forth for court and all these sorts of things. And you and I asked for a special call meeting because nobody had told us. As far as I'm concerned, as a county commissioner, when you shut half the jail down, that's a county emergency.
It is.
And the commissioners need to meet on it and need to decide how to handle it. This is another one of those deals that took place in the back room in secret that we were not told about, was not divulged to us. And the chairman was in that meeting with the manager. They were meeting on highway RPO transportation committee. And they were in there, and we asked both of them for an emergency meeting. They both refused. The chairman can call an emergency meeting the way it works if he's requested to and agrees to, or any four commissioners, which is the majority of the Board of Commissioners, can call a special call meeting. Well, guess what? We could not get support from anybody else. And the reason was because the boys that were sitting on there, the same guys that are giving us trouble now, were on the inside of this thing, and they refused to support it. We put it on the agenda for the very next meeting. We didn't get anywhere with that. It was put down. We didn't know what we were talking about. We didn't know what we were doing. Well, guess what? The $200,000 is now $2 million, and it's off budget. The taxpayers don't even know about it. There's no accountability for it. So is that park that we're talking about at Wrights Creek. That's not on the budget.
If I could interject, is it not analogous in many respects that what went on with the sheriff negotiating, unbeknownst by we commissioners, negotiating and spending money, county taxpayer money, which is not his authority to do so, is that not analogous to what happened back then? Allowing everything to be outside of the parameters of an open meeting where we commissioners meet and speak openly about what the problem is and how we need to correct it and what the cost is going to be. None of that was discussed when they decided to spend over $400,000 to house prisoners in Pitt County for less than 2 months.
Yes. Yes.
Now that's what it's come down to. A $200,000 problem is now money spent, people hired, money spent, people hired, and we're finishing it up by spending $400,000 with Pitt County for less than 2 months, probably about a month and a half, so that we'll have a place to put the prisoners to finish up the jail doors.
Yeah, and look at what has happened. The coronavirus contributed to this, which was one of the good things that's come out of it, is you've heard me sit there and say, I go over the jail reports every month is in the commissioner's package. And I go over that. Who's in here? How long have they been in here? How long is it taking to get trials to get these people out of here? And what are they in here for? On and on it goes. They've been keeping anywhere from, we went from like 120 people through putting pressure on jail and the court system back down to about 90 people. And they've been keeping that many people in jail. Then they say, well, you have to have safekeeping. Some of these birds, you can't put them in there together. So that some of them have to be sent out. So you might have 65 people in jail and another 25 or 30 that are in other locations. Well, when the coronavirus hit, see, and to the public, you've never heard this discussed before, have you? Well, when the coronavirus hit, jail started making some tough decisions about who they would house and how they would keep them there, because the 14 days in isolation became a big deal. So if you wanted to put a prisoner in somewhere, in theory, he had to be 14 days without a fever or any symptoms, or they wouldn't take him. And then they tightened them down and they tightened them down more. Well, guess what happened? A miracle happened. All of a sudden, 1 month, we had less than 40 prisoners, from 80 down to 40. And people had told me now for 4 years, it was impossible to do it any differently. It had to be this way. It was just impossible. Well, guess what happened when it came to the point that you're not going to send any prisoners to Sampson County because we're not taking them. You boys need to figure out what to do with your people over there, because you've got a jail that you can only house about 30 people in it or 40 people in it, and we're not taking these. So what are you going to do with all of these criminals and all these people? Through a miracle, a lot of trials suddenly took place, so that those people could be sent to the state if they were convicted, or turned loose on the street if they weren't convicted. They found other ways that they can handle reducing the jail population. So for all of this fantastic jail that these people told us that we had to spend $25 million for to house these 80 or 90 prisoners, plus growth for the future, which meant another 90. Now all of a sudden,
I think it was build it and they will come.
That build it, they will come. That's right.
That's what they kept saying.
Now we're down to 40 prisoners. So what does that tell you? Bad management everywhere you look.
Can I circle back to the negotiations?
Sure.
Think about what you've proffered. Not only does our jail have less prisoners now, I would wager that many jails in our region have less prisoners.
Yeah, you're right.
All of them, probably.
Yeah, all of them.
Now, we've got all this space. We're spending all this money. We've got Beaufort County here who will spend $80 a night. Not $240 a night like we're doing in Pitt, but they'll spend $80 a night. And we can have them there for a full month and a half. Nothing on the back end. Let's do it. Well, they've talked to a lot of people. This is the best deal we're going to be able to get, because we're talking to a lot of people, because there's a lot of people in the same position we're in. We didn't get to that point, did we?
No, not in.
There were no negotiations.
It was a slap down. Either vote for this, or you have no choice but to vote for this.
Something's going to happen in a few days.
But I had the feeling
if we didn't vote for it,
they
couldn't tell us what was going to happen.
They already had
something was going to happen.
The votes to pass it before we went into the meeting. Now, commissioners' meetings are supposed to be open. Every commissioner is supposed to have the same information when any other commissioner gets it. That is not going on with current leadership on our board, and that is a deliberate thing that is put up by the Gang of Five, and they support it, and they have to be not necessarily meeting with each other, but they have to be communicating with each other enough to make this thing work. So this is corruption, and it is costing the taxpayers money. It's unfair, it's dishonest, it's unethical. You can't say enough bad things about it. So we are hoping that the fifth commissioner who's involved in this group, who took Gary Brin's place and is doing a great job of following up Gary Brin and Ron Buzzio, and that is John Rebholz. We're hoping that John doesn't get elected this fall. Because if John gets elected this fall, let me tell you how it's going to work. John and Frankie Waters, Frankie has 2 years to serve, are going to join together. And they're going to go to the two Democrats. They've done this for the last 5 or 6 years. And Frankie is going to wind up as the chairman, and you're still going to have a secret government in Beaufort County. The taxpayers deserve better, and we can reduce taxes if you get the right board. And
Hood argues that it's been 5 or 6 years. I will argue it's been going on for about 20.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm not going to follow.
I can't remember when you did not have a contingency of Republicans or so-called Republicans who would go speak with the Democratic Socialists and get it worked out, where they would give up something and they get something, and then they would form a leadership committee, so to speak, and then they would decide how things would go. Remember how we talked about it? I think we lost a hospital because of it.
Oh, we did. That was insider
a long time ago.
Insider trading. And we lost the hospital in Belhaven because of this kind of backroom deals and stuff. And look at what's going on in Belhaven right now. They have reduced services they're not open 24 hours a day down there. They're only open about 10 or 12 hours a day in Belhaven, and it's a Band-Aid station. It's not a hospital. So Belhaven has lost its hospital, it's lost its school, it's lost a lot of population, and that's the eastern end of the county. We should be looking after Belhaven better. We looked at it, but Ron Buzzio voted against having that hospital in Belhaven. Frankie Waters voted against it every chance they got. So it's these, I hate to say it, and somebody may try to hold this against me. I may see this again. It's these so-called new Republicans that are causing a lot of the trouble. You have to ask yourself, how can you have 5 Republicans on a board of 7 people and you wind up with a Democrat as the vice chairman?
I will argue, Hood, that these so-called Republicans are not really Republicans. They're what they call Republican in name only. Some people refer to them as nominal Republicans.
Rhinos.
Many of them later in life, I mean very late in life, became Republicans, but they're still Democrats. They're probably the old-timey Democrat, not the Democratic Socialists that we see today, but they are still that Democrat.
I don't know that I would give them the old-timey Democrat, because the old-timey Democrat when I was a kid would be a Republican, a true Republican. Today.
You're right.
They are more of liberal, they're a liberal Democrat. They're a modern-day liberal Democrat running masqueraded as a Republican. And the Republican Party is allowing this to go on.
They do use the word progressive a lot.
Yes.
They talk about progress and being progressive a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier we were speaking of money wasted housing prisoners, which is a necessary component of law enforcement. Now, Hood and I both believe in strong law enforcement. We believe in a society that does not enforce laws and does not operate by the rule of law will devolve into chaos quickly. Another issue we want to talk about is fortunately something that's not happened in Beaufort County, but could. We will do everything we can to forestall that. We think that we have law enforcement officers who will hit the streets and do what needs to be done. In fact, in the last commission, well, it was about 2 meetings ago, we did spend another roughly $60,000 for new riot equipment for our sheriff's department. Brand new stuff. It's going to be housed properly. Should last for decades. And keep our law enforcement officers safe and hopefully act as a deterrent against us over having the lawlessness we've seen across this nation. The other component of that is we as public officials had a resolution in it. Believe it or not, it passed 4-2. Can't believe we didn't get 2 of the votes, but I wrote a resolution that we would not only spend what we needed to spend within reason to enforce law and order in Beaufort County, but we would stand behind our law enforcement people, our sheriff, whoever he may be, this sheriff, the next sheriff. We will stand behind them and give them the needed political backing that is not being given in so many other areas. And we want law to be enforced in this area. We couched it in terms of protecting the civil liberties of everyone. When you start taking away someone's property rights, which is being done in cities all over this nation, you're not protecting the civil liberties of those who own that property. And we can get into ownership property, whether it's right or wrong, but in the United States, we have a construct of the ownership of property, which is a very important part of our freedoms, who we are. And what we're seeing in this lawlessness is the destruction of property as a way to take away that freedom. Now, I'm going to argue, and Hood may argue right along with me, that what we've done in America is slowly break down the process of knowing what is right and what is wrong, where our freedoms lie, and those are being taken away by an unruly mob that is being financed by people who want to destroy this nation, this republic. Now, Hood, I've set you up.
Mm-hmm.
I know you got a lot to go on with this.
Well, thank you. You know, one of the things that people need to understand is while have been basically peaceful in eastern North Carolina for the last 3 or 4 months throughout this, other parts of the nation like Minneapolis, they burned 500 businesses in Minneapolis, virtually destroyed the place. One of the reason that goes on is your political leadership. When you see the rioting and it's allowed to continue and flourish and prosper, it's because local politicians support it. They support the rioting. When you see the police pull back because the mayor and the city council of these towns pull the police back and would not allow them to do their job, this is a political decision that was made. It was not, don't puzzle yourself about how this is happening and why this is happening. It's really very simple. You have weak political leadership that supports the Communist Party and the Socialist Party, and they support this.
Hood, I have this problem. I can't figure it out if these democratic socialist political leaders in these other areas, whether they think these lawless individuals are their constituents, maybe their families are their constituents, or they are beholden to the group of people who are using these useful idiots to tear down their society, and they want to be part of that society once it gets torn down. If you understand how communism works, and let's face it, socialism is just a stepping stone to communism. The way communism works, it starts out being for everyone, and we all have a better life because everything is shared equally. The problem with that is, once it gets shared equally, for just a matter of days, then a group starts deciding, how can I have more than the next person? And then who gets more is legislated. It goes through their government. Then the government seems to be controlled by these people who always want more. Let's face it, Vladimir Putin is a dictator. He is probably, if not the richest, one of the richest men in Europe. Reports is he has over $40–50 billion in banks scattered around the world. Now, the man has never created anything. He's never hired anybody to work for him that wasn't paid by his government. How does he have $40–50 billion? Does he come from money? Is he new money? I think it's new money, and he made it from governing. Not unlike, I'd like to say, and I'm sad to say this, but it was once said, I think, by Will Rogers. He said, you can tell an honest politician by the amount of money they have once they get out of office. You know what I mean by that? If they come out of office and they've got a lot of money, they're probably not that honest. We got a president right now who probably had a lot more money before he went into office than he's got right now. Now, is he a dishonest politician? A lot of people say he is. I don't see it. He might lie about his hand size or about the size of his audience. But the big stuff, the stuff I know because I've been doing this for years, he doesn't lie. He might say he's the greatest in the world, or they've done a great job. There's probably other people who've done better jobs at different times. That's minor stuff. He might lie a little bit about liking Kim. We're great friends. That's just the way the guy negotiates. He gets real close to people. And then I think, what's the old adage? Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Yeah, that's the way he operates. In the past, we didn't do that. We just didn't talk to people. We didn't talk.
Well, a word about this communist theory, which a lot of young people have been taken in on, and that is, think about how the Communist Party would operate. Not much different than the way the Democrat Party or the Republican Party is organized today. And that is with the individual voter who goes to the precinct meeting and picks somebody to go to the county convention, who picks somebody to go to the state convention, and up it goes. It's the same political basic organization that the Republicans and the Democrats have in the United States. The problem is the Communist Party, it becomes a dictatorship. Once it's organized and once the people are in on the ground floor, and you hit on something, Stan, these people that are supporting this, these political leaders, they want to be in on the ground floor of the new thing when it happens. But what I'm asking you to do is look around you. You will have this organization in your community. Look at the same people that are crooks today are going to be the crooks in the new organization.
The elitist?
the crooks, the actual people that are thieving and the
people that are
elitists or
used to
whatever,
having money.
it's the same
stuff.
people, and they're going to take your money, only they're going to take it by force. And if you don't like that in a dictatorship, they'll just take you out and kill you if you protest too much. So think about that when you think about communism. That's what these people want. They think they're going to be on the ground floor. And the people that are doing the dirty work in this, they are only a very few people.
How is that any different than what we do as county commissioners? And I'm asking this rhetorically, and you jump in. How is that any different than what we do as county commissioners? We have something called police power.
Yeah.
That gives us the right to tax. We have the awesome responsibility to take everything you own up to a certain point. The state of North Carolina won't let us go past a certain point, but we could go probably about 2 or 3 times more than what we do right now. Now, we have that awesome responsibility that we can take from you in order to pay our bills, to pay your bills. So think about it. We can come take your property. We can do it right now. You have redress through the courts. In a communist society where they take what you have and spread it around with everybody else, you have no redress.
That's right. That's the big difference.
You get mad, you go to the gulag. That's the way it works.
You elect a board of county commissioners, essentially a new board every 4 years, although it's on a 2-year swing, but you can turn the whole board over in 4 years. You will not turn the Communist Party over in 4 years. Because it will be the same people who are in there because of their political pull are going to stay in there. You're not going to have honest, fair elections by any stretch of the imagination. And and you're not going to have any property. You're going to divide your property up with everybody else. They're going to take whatever you got. So, and everybody's supposed, in theory, see, it's equal. We're equal. All men are created equal. We believe that. But in the Communist Party, they will tell you that, but some people are a lot more equal than other people. So,
and they decide who's more equal.
Right.
Yeah. And they legislate who's more equal.
And what's going on in the country at the moment, though, with the rioting and all of that, we're talking about these political leaders that sanction this and support it because they want to be a part of the new Communist Party when it takes over, and that's really what it's about. You need to understand that less than 3% of the people in the American Revolution actually won the revolution. The rest of the people were out there doing their thing, farming, going to work, doing whatever. So there was only about 3% of the population that was actually active.
And they estimate that only 35 to 40% of the people actually believed in the revolution.
Well,
a vast majority believed in not going against England.
750,000, 4 million people in the United States when the war was over, when the revolution was over. 750,000 left the United States because they were loyal to the king and they knew they couldn't stay here and be loyal to the king. But going back to what's going on with these people, this is well less than 3% of the people that are causing the problem.
Yes.
So, but in order to take over and get people to vote for their candidates who will do their bidding, you have to destabilize the government. You have to make people fearful. You have to have them hiding in their homes, afraid to come out. Guess what? The coronavirus provided a real good method for these guys to do this. And I'm still of the opinion that the virus is a farce. And I can tell you why it's a farce. How many people do you know of that have died from this? How many people are in the local hospital? Where do you see people lying in the streets not taken care of because of the virus? It's not a pandemic. It never was a pandemic. It's no different than any other flu or virus that comes about. Every year we have it. It's a seasonal thing. This thing has been worked and politicized into something that helps these people because now we have people quivering in their homes in little balls and corners, not knowing what to do, can't go to work. That is destabilizing.
It is destabilizing.
It is destabilizing society. It's destabilizing business and industry. There are a lot of people who will vote for anything once things get bad enough just to have a little bit of peace, and they don't care what's going to happen to them.
They don't know exactly how things work. They don't even realize this has never happened in America today.
This has never happened anywhere in the world before.
Exactly. We had the Spanish flu in 1918, and 1920. The Spanish flu took 625,000 souls in America, and we had a population at that time of around 124 million people. Now you do the math. That's by today's standards, by how large America is, that would be us losing about 2.4 million people to the coronavirus. Guess what? America didn't shut down. We couldn't shut down. We fought the World War I.
Well, the classical method for these pandemics and the classical method for contagion is that you quarantine the people that are sick and let the rest of the people go to work and keep the country going and do what they're supposed to do. But we're not doing this with this. This is a horrible thing that's happened to us. And my dear friend, I say my dear friend, I've never met him, Donald Trump has been taken on this thing, and I think he now realizes that he has been had by the people who gave him this horrible advice to shut the country down. Because he admits that part of the people in his administration were saying, don't shut the country down, use the quarantine, and let the virus run through the population. We all know the virus has to run through the population. It's going to be there until it does run through the population. And these numbers that you hear every time you turn on the television of how awful it is and this and that, do the numbers. You got to have 200 million people have had the virus or been inoculated before you get to herd immunity. So how long is it going to take at the rate we're going right now? And the answer is 1 year you're going to be under this. And longer than 1 year you're going to be under this with stuff shut down, people can't work, people going bankrupt, families suffering. And the awful thing is, even though this stuff, the virus does not harm children, they're not going to let children go to school because we have to protect children. Really, the people that know about immunities, the old adage of you have to eat a peck of dirt before you die is true. The younger the children can be exposed to these things, the better off they are because their body builds immunity and they're able to fight off the next thing that comes at them. They're telling us you start keeping these children inside too long, they do not get to exchange germs with other children, and consequently their immune system is compromised. So there's a lot of bad things to come out of this. I'm 80 years old. I'm one of the at-risk groups if we get this. But the stuff still has to run through the population in order for all of us to be protected. And what is going on is a farce, and the people that are perpetrating the farce are people who simply don't want Donald Trump to be elected. It's as simple as that.
For people at home, we are COVID aware. Hood is exactly 6 feet away from me. Plus, I spend a lot of time with Hood. I know he's not sick. He ain't got no COVID.
Right. One other thing that I would like to just mention, if I can, Stan, is we've been victimized by modern technology. Within the last 10 or 15 years, we suddenly have the ability through cell phones and through Facebook and Instagram and all of these other modern technologies to communicate with each other and to communicate with vast numbers of people very economically. This has played heavily into the hands of the people who propagandize us. Propaganda is a word that Americans find foreign. Well, when I was a kid, back in the 50s, got to keep in mind I was an old dude, we heard a lot about propaganda. Propaganda was on the radio all the time, and it always was the same kind of a story. Well, the Russian propaganda machine today came out with this. The Russian propaganda machine came out with that. We haven't heard propaganda in a long time. But the modern way that we can communicate allows a lot of propaganda to go around. Now, what is propaganda? Propaganda is usually something that could be believed, but there's not a word of truth in, and it's out there to make you think a certain way about this issue or that issue. And what we're being faced with today is a huge propaganda machine, and all of the places that are doing social communications are involved in it. And they keep hitting you over and over with the same thing. The old adage, if you tell a man the same thing enough times, sooner or later he'll start believing it. Remember the bodies that were piling up in China because of the virus? Remember the refrigeration trucks that were hired to be brought in? All that was pure lies. And now we know that it was lies. And the public needs to learn to do critical thinking. It's not a matter of just soaking up whatever it goes in your direction that you think suits the way you think. critical thinking is not taught in the school system anymore.
No.
And all critical thinking is a whole lot of common sense.
Yeah.
Of, well, let's see, if they told me the other day that apples were red and now they're telling me that all apples are green, well, there must be something wrong with that. That's critical thinking. It's as simple as that.
It's not that the apples are red. There are green apples. It's just not, there's not always one or the other.
That's right.
And that's what they do. They tell you something, they keep telling you, and they get you to the point where some people, when I say you, I mean you plural, some people just won't investigate any further. We saw it with the Russia hoax. I mean, first of all, one of the things Donald Trump said in one of the rallies, I don't watch all of his rallies, but I heard this one. He said, Russia, if you're out there, I'm paraphrasing, please go find Hillary's emails.
Yeah, right.
I thought it was funny.
I did
You're
too.
laughing. I was laughing.
Right.
The next day, Donald Trump publicly calls for Russia to hack into the American system.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it was a joke, but that's where these people were willing to take this. And once he got elected, this was before he got elected, once he got elected, they were ready to go and say anything at any time. And the problem with this is, and this is the great component as to whether you recognize whether, say, these fake news outlets like NBC, when I say NBC, because it's really all of NBC right now, not just MSNBC, and CNN, New York Times, and the Washington Post. The problem with these guys are they are large outlets. They have a lot of people who use their product, and they know that, and they have taken these people down the primrose path, and they've been wrong about almost everything. Nothing that they have predicted ad nauseum is come into effect. Maybe a few things, but it's negligible. And then there's so many other outlets out there which are dispensing news and information, hypothesizing on what is real. There's a lot of them. And you know what they always go back to? They always go back to our Constitution.
Yeah.
And they always go back to articles that allow us to think and feel the way we do. They also go back to the laws that were built on that Constitution. Because so many people do not understand how the law works. It's like Roger Stone. This thing that happened with the president commuting Roger Stone's sentence. He didn't pardon him, he commuted it. Well, Roger Stone got like 8 years for lying to liars about a case built on a lie. If it hadn't have been for Donald Trump, him knowing Donald Trump, he'd have never gotten in trouble. He lied to liars about a case built on a lie. And to take it one step further, I heard him say this last night, and maybe he's lying. But then again, there's going to be corroborating evidence of this because he had a lawyer in the room, his lawyer. But the district attorney, not the district attorney, I guess it was a federal prosecutor, right? It would be a federal prosecutor, came to him and said, can you remember your conversations with the president?
Right.
I need you to do that, and I'll let you off.
Right.
Or we'll give you a reduced sentence. Please remember. I'm going to give you this opportunity. And he wouldn't do it because he said, I'm not going to bear false witness against my friend.
That's right.
This is not true.
Right.
They wanted him to lie in a case built on him lying to liars on a case built on a lie. Do you see how crazy that is? How preponderous that is? And there are people out there right now that will be watching this.
Yeah.
That think I am the liar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Come debate me. Come debate me. Come debate Hood. You lose. Okay, Hood, continue.
Well, I'm about finished. The only thing that I want to say is to the public is please stop and think about the reasonableness of anything that you're told or anything you hear. Is it reasonable that Donald J. Trump is the Manchurian Candidate?
Yes.
Does that make any sense at all?
They must have all seen the movie.
So, with that, thank you, Stan. I appreciate you inviting me to be here today, and I hope you will allow me to return sometime in the future.
I'm looking forward to it, Hood, and I would like to segue into some of what we said in the beginning of this conversation. A lot of what goes on in Beaufort County is built on lies.
You got it.
And there's a tremendous amount of propaganda. There was propaganda when I started Beaufort County Now years ago. There still is. Thank God the Washington Daily News has only got 2 days a week to run it and a website that is god awful. And thank you for being here, Hood. I hope we have many more sessions like this. I hope to have more people here for what's happening now. Come back. Thank you.